Hi, mahalo. I'm Steve from Uala Leaf Cafe, and today we are making chicken karaage here with
Aloha, I'm Noe, also from Uala Leaf Cafe. Mahalo you guys so much for joining us this morning. Like Chef Steve said, we'll be showing you guys how to do a really ono and a delicious recipe that you can use at home and impress your ohana and impress your keiki. We're going to be doing Chef Steve's famous chicken karaage. So for those of you who have come up to the cafe and had the opportunity to try our chicken karaage, now is your opportunity to make this at home.
Okay, here we go. So in our recipe today, we're using about 2 pounds of chicken thighs. Sometimes when you get them out of the store, you might see there's a little bit of veins in the chicken close to the leg. You can cut that off. Just get that out. If there's any bone marrow or anything, bone fragments, just cut that out. And then you just want to cube your chicken into about 1-inch pieces.
I'm pulling the little, I know because we're kind of far away, so I don't know if you can see the pieces. In the recipe that Makana attached to the email yesterday, it did say a tray of chicken, so we just want to make a little correction to that. You usually want to use about 2 pounds of chicken. And it's really cool because this recipe, you can either do it skinless or skin on. So depending on how you like to eat your karaage chicken and how crunchy, crispy you want it to be.
Yeah, I like the skin on because I like fried chicken. So
Totally.
So once we cut the chicken, you want to season it like anything, salt and pepper. A little salt and pepper just for seasoning. Just everybody gets a little love. And then, so our recipe calls for 1/2 cup of sake, which I just bought. This is a cheap one. It's about $2.50 at times, the supermarket. Shochikubai. You can drink it and you can cook with it. I always have it at home.
So for those of you, it's a pretty green bottle. You can find this pretty much anywhere. CVS, you can find it at Don Quixote's. One of my favorite places to go get this kind of ingredients.
Okay. Then next is soy sauce. I like to use this Yamasa. It's called usukuchi. It's a light soy sauce. It's light in color, but it's a little stronger shoyu because the marinade is usually like half an hour. And half an hour.
I have a question about the green bottle. What section in the store can you find it? Asian or alcohol?
You go to the alcohol.
Yes.
Alcohol.
Yeah, alcohol.
So there you got the soy sauce and the sake in there. Then you want about a tablespoon or 2 of ginger. I use 2. I've also used grated onion too. If you wanted to add some onion, maybe another tablespoon or 2 of onion, sweet onion.
So the recipe again that Makana attached to the email is a baseline recipe. What's really cool about this particular recipe is that you can tweak it to your liking. So like if you really like ginger, you can add a little bit more ginger. When I make this at home, I'll do a little bit of ginger and I'll also grate some olena because I just absolutely love the flavor of olena. It gives it a nice little punch. Even for the sake, there's alternatives. Yes, Chef Steve?
Oh yeah. If you don't like alcohol, you don't even have to use the sake. Or if you just have like a white wine, a dry white wine would work just as well.
Yeah. Or if you want it a little more on the sweeter side, you can use mirin. So the whole point is to get like that dry punch where, you know, when you eat it, it has this, that right over here that tastes really good. So you can do sake, you can do a dry white wine, you can use knitted. Any other things we could use for the pretty much it, yeah.
If you want it spicy, you can add chili peppers to it. You can even make it a garlic chicken.
Ooh, yes.
It doesn't have to be ginger. So whatever flavorings you like. So while that's marinating for a little while, I like to use the potato starch. And this is just a Uala brand. You get it in the Asian section of Times. And just open it, pour it out on a nice dusty pan.
So
You can also use cornstarch.
Potato brand. That's kind of what the bag looks like. You'll see in some, like I know at Foodland, it's a lot longer, but it's only about $2-3, and you can use it to give any kind of crunch to whatever you're making.
So at this point, you want to. I have this little portable fryer from home. If you don't have that, you can heat the oil up in a pan at home. Usually, you can test the oil temperature by putting like a chopstick into the pan. I'm sorry, you can't really see this. And if it starts to
You'll see little bubbles.
yeah, then you know that the oil is hot.
The most common mistake when it comes to frying, if you don't have a fryer at home, like for me, I don't have a deep fryer. I just kind of use a wok, or I'll use a pot and I'll fill it with oil. A lot of people, when they fry, they're looking for, you know, the bubbles to tell them if it's hot or not. Oil doesn't normally bubble, so the best way to do it is either, like Steve said, to stick a chopstick, because it's porous. When you stick it into the oil will start to create little bubbles around. You can kind of tell if it's hot. Or if you have, of course, a thermometer that you can stick into the oil, you can see. Ideally, you're looking for about 325. You don't want it to be so hot that it'll burn it when you put the chicken into the fryer. 325 is a nice starter, and then you're gonna bring that temperature up, and that's how you get that nice, well-rounded crispiness.
So after about half an hour with your marinade, we'll strain the chicken. Yeah. So the longer you marinate, the more flavor you'll get. But I don't like to marinate it more than half an hour. But you can do it. People do it overnight. It might come a little dark, but that's another reason why I use the light in color soy sauce.
Yeah. So it really depends on what kind of soy sauce you use. Most of us might not have this type of soy sauce, and so for me at home, I have the ever famous local favorite brand of Aloha Shoyu. That works just as well, but like Chef Steve was saying, a half an hour ideally is a really good time to keep it marinating, because you don't want the flavor to be so overpowering. You want it to have a nice mild flavor, especially if you're going to use sake, because it's such a strong, pungent flavor mixed with the soy sauce. So you want it to be nice and mild and light. Half an hour, 45 minutes, but again, if you want to let it soak overnight, 45 minutes, go for it. The flavor is going to be really, really strong. And that's good too, that there's nothing wrong with it.
So once you have it strained, so you take each piece individually and coat it in the potato starch. And you kind of want to pat it off. Ideally skin side out, and then from this point you kind of want to make it kind of like in a ball. So we'll dredge all this right now. and it's sometimes it's a little difficult to keep it nice and keep the flour fresh. So that's why we do it one at a time. So if you have too much liquid in your chicken, you'll get like lumps in your potato starch.
So this is probably the most time-consuming part of this recipe, but the end result will really show, the love and care that you put into this part. This is the important part. So the potato starch, and or again, like Chef Steve said, if you don't have potato starch at home, you can also use cornstarch. For me personally, I do a blend of the two, and it comes out just as crispy and crunchy. I do a blend of the two because I only had a little bit cornstarch one time and I had more potato starch, so I just kind of used the two. It's also a great activity, messy, mind you, but it's a great activity. I like to include my kids at home, especially now during this time. We just made chicken karaage the other night, and so I just kind of cleared the table. I put it in the middle of the table, and I gave everybody their individual pieces, and they helped me get it nice and coated before I threw it in the fryer. But when you're doing this, you want to do it individually to make sure, one, that it's completely coated. So by doing it individually, you can make sure you flip it, try to get some under the skin. And then two, you don't want it to be so wet or so clumpy that when you throw it in the fryer, that excess goes to the bottom of the pot. That's how you burn your oil really quick. So when you're coating it with the, let me bring this a little closer. When you're coating the chicken, I can't even see what I'm doing. If you can see that. So you just want kind of like a really light coating, but you want to make sure that you get it all the way around. You don't want a lot of clumps because, again, when it goes into the fryer, all that excess coating will just fall off and fall to the bottom of the fryer, and that's how you get your oil to burn really quick.
All right. So once everything is coated, so oil is ready to go. 350 is the max. I mean, don't go higher than that. 325. We start a little bit low. Turn it up a little bit once we start adding, because once you start adding chicken, the oil will drop in temperature.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is there a certain type of oil that you prefer? And if so, modifications if you don't have that oil?
That's a great question.
Canola oil is what I prefer to use. That's fine. You could use peanut oil or any frying oil, but I like this one. The canola oil, I would suggest.
Canola has a lighter blend.
You can use a soybean oil.
Yeah. You gotta keep in mind when you use the different types of oils that some of them have a stronger flavor, and so it can affect the taste in the end. The end result is you want a nice, crispy, clean, easy friable oil. So like Chef Steve said, the canola. I've used peanut oil with this chicken karaage because peanut oil is really great for frying. It takes a high temperature, but because you kind of start at a lower temperature and slowly rise it, canola holds up really well in this case.
Also, my grandmother, she used to put like just a little bit of sesame oil in it, just to give it enhance the oil. That was nice.
That's a great flavor.
And while that's cooking, so you can at home you can just get a napkin, or I just use a piece of tempura paper, which I have cut in half and put it on the plate. This is to absorb the oil once we're done frying. The chicken should only take about five minutes to cook.
So while that's cooking, we're gonna start preparing the garnish for afterwards. We oftentimes use lemon afterwards to kind of heighten the flavor at the end result. So It's super simple. You're just gonna make some easy wedges. You just take your whole lemon, cut it right in half, and then you're gonna cut it in 4 sections to create your wedges. And when you create your wedges, there's a little fancy schmancy part. So you see when you create your wedges here, it has this white pith. So you wanna go ahead and remove that. So what we did is we create, just to make it a little nicer. And then you don't have to worry about that, the bitterness from this pith coming out. So you just slice it right off, remove any seeds that are in there. And then you wanna take your knife and just kind of give it a little cut. What this will do is it'll release the juices in there so that when you use it, if you want to use it to add a little bit of bitterness to the chicken karaage, when you use it, it's a little bit easier to juice. So when you juice it, it just comes out a little bit easier. That's just a little trick, the trade. Again, if you don't have a deep fryer like this, I've done it in my air fryer. If you guys have an air fryer at home, it comes out really well. Or you can get a pot, fill it up with a little bit of oil, or you can also use a pan. You want to just make sure that at least half of the chicken is covered when you're frying it, so that when you, if you're doing it in a pan and you flip it, you have a nice even fry.
So when you're cooking on the stove, the chicken when it starts to come up to the top, that means that the moisture has been almost cooked out from the outside, and that's a good indicator that you're ready to come up. So it's not sitting in the oil; it's actually rising up, which is what you want. And one thing I was gonna say is, so Grandma used to always save the oil. So if you save the oil, you probably want to strain it so that you get all of the excess potato starch out from the oil. If you want your chicken karaage to come out really crispy and light color looking, you want to use a new fresh oil. If you use a reused oil over, you'll see that the chicken will tend to be a little darker. That's just because the oil is a little dirty or burnt. And then we'll take a couple pieces. So if you serve this at home or kind of like in the restaurant, maybe like five or 6 pieces. And a little bit of lemon.
Not a bit of lemon.
A little bit of salt. And that is how we prepare our chicken karaage.
Oh my God, if you could just smell this. Yay! We're up here at Uala if you want to come join us for lunch. Just kidding. Yeah, so you can go ahead and fry it until it has a nice crispy golden brown, or once it starts floating. Because again, like Chef Steve said, that is an indicator that a lot of the moisture is out of the chicken. But you don't want to leave it floating too long, and you don't want it too crispy brown, because then you'll actually dry it out. So you want to find a nice happy medium when you're frying it, just so that it has a lot of moisture and it still has that crunch.
Chef, I have a question.
Yep.
Once the chicken is cooked, how long can it stay out without spoiling or risking food poisoning?
Okay, so if you can leave it out. Technically, like if it's for a bento, you're gonna pack it for lunch or something. I would say like 4 hours at the max. But and then comes to room temperature. If you leave it out longer and it seems like it's starting to get soggy or not as appealing. You can reheat. You can heat up the oil again, and just flash fry it, just a little bit till it comes back. It'll be a little bit drier, a little bit more crispier. Some people like that. Yeah. So if you make a party, I would do it like a little bit ahead of time, but not too far. 4 hours. I would say 4 hours is the safe zone for any type of food that you leave out. But you know, we live in Hawaii and we eat a lot of bentos and stuff like that. So it, you know, depending on how.
You want to keep in mind. You want to keep in mind also that ideally, right out of the fryer after it's cooled down, and you're not doing that biting wusassing to get the air into your mouth to cool it down to eat it. So you want to wait a little while after that, maybe about 10-15 minutes, so it's still hot and the crunch is there. The longer it stays out, it will start to pick up the moisture and it will take away that crunch eventually. You know, that 4 hour window is always the safe zone. But at the end of 4 hours, the crunch is probably not going to be as crispy as it was when you first took it out. So you want to keep that in mind. You can flash fry it again, or you can put it in the oven on broil if you kind of spray some oil on it just to re-crisp it. But again, that's all going to make the chicken turn out drier because you're just re-cooking it. Yeah.
So if you're taking it to like somebody's house or something, I would suggest once you put it in a pan, if you have something like a rack like this to keep the chicken from sticking or touching each other, that would be nice. Another thing is you don't want to seal it. You could put a foil and have some holes in it. Otherwise, it'll steam. If you could just put it in a paper bag, maybe it would be better.
And that's pretty much it. That's your chicken karaage. Again, the base recipe is super simple. You can tweak it to how you like it by adding more or less of the ingredients that are on the recipe. You want to get fancy, you can add some extra stuff in there too. It's really how creative you want to be with your cooking. Do we have any questions? I think we still have a few more minutes.
Yes, thank you so much, Chef Steven and Chef Noe. I guess we have a little time. Does anybody have any other questions? You can unmute yourself and ask your question if you would like.
I didn't hear that.
Sorry,
I couldn't hear
the
that.
fryer is so loud right now. We didn't hear that. I'm so sorry.
Oh no, I'm just waiting for anybody who has any questions. It doesn't look like there is any.
Pretty good.
Okay. Well, in that case, thank you so much. Do you guys have any last words, chefs?
Well, I hope it's not too difficult for anybody to try this at home. I mean, when I run these classes for the non-credit, people go home and make it, and we get a lot of good responses from it. So it's not too hard.
It's not too hard.
It just takes a little bit of the flouring, the breading part. That's it.
That's pretty much it. I make this like literally. I make this recipe at least once a week at home via my kids' request. And so even the chicken, how we showed you, you cut it in little bigger pieces like this, which is really good. But like I have children that are a little bit smaller, and so I make little bite-sized popcorn sizes, and they just eat it up like
chicken nuggets. That sounds great.
I have a question. This is just me. It's not asked anybody. I was telling my mom last night, could you use the same recipe for like squid?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, you do the
octopus,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any protein, pretty much. Pork is really good. You can do a pork karaage. You can do. I've never tried fish. If you're gonna do it with fish, you might want to use a little more solid one that doesn't break up in the fryer. But, yeah. Oh man, it's good.
I use leftover turkey from Thanksgiving. It comes out. Turkey's a little dry, but
Awesome. Well, other than that, thank you so much.